What is good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another SK Wealth Academy podcast. Now, I'm going to lead with the Redditor Silver Short Squeeze, but the bulk of this podcast is going to be about the ongoing absurdities of the oligarchs' reaction to the CVD virus. Now, you all know what the CVD virus is, but I have to be very careful in how I've referenced it if I don't want to get banned from YouTube, which shortly I'll migrate away anyways. But for the time being, I would like to stay on board here for probably a couple more months. So I don't want to get banned in those couple months before I completely migrate away. So let's get started. And if you've listened to my other podcast about the CVD, know that what I tried to do most recently is that you're not going to be listening to a rehash of old arguments. What I try to do is to use indisputable mathematics to point out the absurdity of what is happening around us in response to these lockdowns in a manner that I'm 100% positive people have not presented the absurdity of the situation using mathematics in this sense, and that can perhaps be a tool for you to explain the absurdity to other of your friends that just aren't buying into it, but are buying into the narratives of the state and have just become a complete victim and mindless slave of the state. So let's get started. Now, I may do a live stream soon for Redditors that want to ask me questions about the silver short squeeze. So let me know in comments below if you would be interested in a live stream in which you can ask me questions directly. I probably will need it to run it because of my schedule at about 9 in the morning New York time. So East Coast time in the United States, 9 a.m. So if you live in different parts of the world, you can check to see what time that will be in your area. And I'll probably run it on a Saturday, like on a weekend, so that more people that are interested can join in if they would like. So I'll probably run it on a Saturday or a Sunday, at 9 a.m. New York time. So if at least 20 of you comment in the section below that you would like me to run a live stream which you can ask me questions about the Redditor Silver Short Squeeze, then I will go ahead and run it. But if less than 20 of you comment in the section, there's no sense in me running it if less than 20 people are going to show up. So that's the magic number, 20 or more. Even if it's just 20, even though it's a super small amount, I will still run the live stream. So let's get started. Now, like I said, I was going to make one quick comment about the silver short squeeze before moving on to the CVD virus. So what I wanted to say is I've seen a number of comments from Redditors about how the silver short squeeze is a distraction from the short squeeze of GameStop stock and how people should not be distracted. Keep your focus on the GameStop short squeeze, but I highly, highly disagree in my humble opinion, and here's why. Now, I firmly believe the main dish is the silver squeeze, and GameStop, as it also came first in the order of short squeezes, was merely the appetizer for the main dish of the silver short squeeze. And here's why. Because at the very best, even if Redditors are able to keep this short squeeze going, of which I have my doubts, only because the ruling class oligarchs will just change the laws however they see fit or put a lot of pressure on Robinhood to, maybe they came out and said there's 36 shares, including GameStop, of which their users can only hold one share. Now, at this point, they're saying they're not enforcing that. But in the future, they could just enforce that, right? And then automatically liquidate. If someone had like 500 shares of GameStop, they could just liquidate 499 shares with that person having no voice and just liquidate it until they had one share. That is certainly not out of the realm of possibilities. And I actually would say it's probably more in the realm of likelihood than out of the realm of not being a possibility. And as we already saw, like Janet Yellen they were saying the U.S. Secretary of Treasury had a huge interest in the hedge funds that were being hurt by the GameStop short squeeze. So you have the U.S. Treasury Secretary that is being hurt. So look, when you have all these people at the highest levels of governance, including in politics, including in the banking and financing sector, and they're being hurt, trust me, they're going to do everything in their power. And of course, I don't want that to happen, but we have to look at reality. We have to realize they're going to do everything in their power to put the big hurt on those that are executing the short squeeze. So in any event, like I said, the best possible outcome, even if the price could be further squeezed higher from like its current price, when I'm recording this, its current price is like $325 a share. Even if they could run it up to $1,000, the best possible outcome is you put a couple hedge funds out of business and make them bankrupt, right? But why I say silver is the main course, that's the best possible outcome, right? So what is really going to change? Probably not that much, because all the customers lost by that hedge fund, another hedge fund will snatch up, and then that hedge fund will just become the monster that the hedge funds that were put out of business were. So the best possible outcome, though, out of a sustained silver short squeeze, I'm not saying like we execute a short squeeze in silver markets and run it up to $50 an ounce. No, because on an inflation-adjusted basis, that's well below even the $50 it reached in 2011. On an inflation-adjusted basis, we got to think multiple times higher, right? So at least over $150, over $200. But if we ran it up to $500, which even then would not necessarily even be a manipulated price. Who knows? Maybe that's a fair market silver price. We don't really know what the fair market prices of any of these commodities are. Oil, gold, silver, copper, platinum, palladium, because they've been excessively manipulated by bankers for decades and decades and decades. So we don't really even know what the fair market, what do I mean by the fair market price? Well, if bankers are out of the markets, interest rates were set by the free market, and the price of commodities were actually set by physical supply and demand determinants instead of pushing pieces of paper around in the futures markets, which primarily sets the price. Physical demand of gold and silver does have some say in setting the price of gold and silver, but it's primarily the biggest primary contributor to setting the price, which bankers have a stranglehold on, is the futures market right now, right? So again, if we were able to execute now sustained, like I said, not just a immediate push of silver up to $50 or even $100, but sustained over like an entire year, over entire 2 years. So silver going to $300, $400, $500 a share. Guess what? We could, instead of the analogy would be what Redditors would do by continuing the short squeeze in GameStop and bringing down a few hedge funds. That's like bringing down the street corner drug hustler, right? It's slinging heroin and cocaine and killing, some people in your neighborhood and community by doing so. But if we execute the silver short squeeze, guess what? Instead of bringing down the neighborhood street hustler, we could bring down the Pablo Escobars and the El Chapo Guzmans and whoever was that Asian dude that was just arrested, that they called the Pablo Escobar of Asia, who ran the Golden Triangle drug trade and had a stranglehold on that heroin and the opium in the poppy fields. We would be bringing down guys this big. That's the difference between a successful short squeeze mission and a successful game stop squeeze mission. So let me, move on. So I want to just mention that, again, with the absurdity, the CVD lockdowns, we're being conditioned to turn on one another. We're being conditioned to be a slave of the state and to serve statism and to basically be obedient to the state, of course, under the guise, but the very deceptive guise of, hey, you got to help protect your neighbors, and for the welfare of your common citizens, you got to snitch on anyone you see not obeying the mandates of the state. And that is where we are being conditioned to turn on one another. And people have snitched. Neighbor has snitched on neighbor. Family members have snitched on other family members in the United States and the UK, because they've observed, hey, look at my neighbor. He's having a dinner party and he has 6 dinner guests in this confined space. And that's against what the state told us we can do. The state said no more friends, no more socializing. This is against the welfare of the state, so I'm going to snitch on them and have them arrested and hauled off to jail. Because it's one thing if you're a snitch because you actually took the time to do your research and read all the articles that have been posted online, not only by non-scientists, but also by very credible scientists that completely expose that what we've been ordered to believe about CVD has been completely falsified, non-factual, even at times completely fabricated and completely wrong, and that's snitched based upon this. But like I said, that is a cowardly act, because all you've done is listen to the narratives put out by the state, been blindly obedient to it, and then snitched on people that were thinking for themselves, that actually exercised this thing we have inside our skull and cranium called the brain. So let me move on with the absurdity of what's going on now in the US, because the Centers for Disease Control has now stated that anyone that is not wearing a mask that has at least 2 layers of fabric will be fined now. That's anywhere in the United States, all 50 states. So they say scarves, bandanas, any homemade cloth masks no longer qualify as masking. You must use and the sorry thing about that statement is, because it's coming from a so-called medical authority, is that masks, even if they are, able to filter out the CVD virus, they're still really ineffective as long as people are pulling them down, pushing them up. You have the mucous membranes of the eyes that the virus can travel through. So if they ever touch their mask even one time when wearing it, and then touch their face or rub their eyes, then really that double mask thing is ineffective. And then secondly, even surgeons will tell you this. So if you know a surgeon, talk to your surgeon and say, why? Ask them about how their masks are custom made and fitted. So if there's any gaps in the mask because it's not custom fitted for your face, then they're really not that effective. That's number one. Number two, there's very reputable scientific studies conducted by scientists that are proven that masking does not stop transmission of the CVD. It only slows it. So it's not if nature will find a way, right? Like Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park. So it's not an effective way to really even combat the spread of the virus, because it will only slow down the virus, but the virus will actually eventually keep spreading. And then, so that's number two. Number three, then why, if this is the case now that the CDC is saying everyone has to double mask or wear a mask that has at least 2 filters, why were scarves, why did they allow scarves, bandanas, homemade cloth masks for an entire year? Think about that. It's been an entire year they said that was okay before issuing this mandate. The only reason they could have said that is they had known nothing about science. That's number one, which we know they know something about science. So is there a hidden dark agenda? That's number two. Or three, did they want the virus to spread as far and wide as possible before issuing this mandate? If they knew that, and because we didn't learn anything new about masking in the past year, so they knew bandanas, scarves, homemade cloth masks were not effective in filtering out the virus. So just think about the absurdity, and I'll give you the updated recovery rates for age demographics soon in this podcast, so you'll know that if you're under the age of 70, this virus is not lethal. It's a non-lethal virus. If you're under the age of 70, it should not be classified as a pandemic to you. It should not be considered dangerous to the general population. And I'm going to give you again mathematical scenarios explaining the absurdity. One, which this is the scenario. I'm going to explain sports leagues. Why are they still open? Because when social distancing is obviously impossible, in sports games when people are literally inches away from each other. And as I stated already, go watch my other podcast. If the PCR test is a test that's being used to produce positive results for the CVD, then that is completely worthless and an inaccurate test, as I've already explained, and was also explained by the Nobel Prize winning scientist that actually invented the PCR test. So don't go listen to people that said that's been debunked or this has been debunked or that's garbage. Go to the source itself. That's what you need to do, because a lot of times when people are saying things are debunked, they have not been debunked. And I don't care if it's Bloomberg, Reuters, CNN, especially if it's these sources, then you shouldn't believe that's been debunked. You need to go to the source, who is the creator, the Nobel Prize winning scientist that created the PCR test, that said it cannot, you basically could find virus for anything. You could find everyone HIV positive if you wanted to using the PCR test in the same manner is being used to find people positive for this virus. So the easy answer is why sports leagues are open is because sports are essential to distract people from reality and the truth. The sports leagues have hundreds of millions, if not billions, of fans around the world. And so what does this do? This keeps people distracted as well. It's not only one, to keep us all distracted from learning the truth. It's number two, to reinforce, because athletes are being used like pawns to reinforce the deception of the ruling class and the oligarchy about this virus. Because you have thousands of professional athletes with hundreds of millions of fans just spreading and perpetuating complete rubbish. Like, I've seen athletes in press conferences say, hey, go back. You're within 6 feet of me. Stay 6 feet away. You're invading my space. Wear mask up, put your mask on. What are you doing? I've seen athletes say this, like seen videos where they said that to fans. I got too close to them during the game. Hey, put your mask on. So they're just reinforcing the garbage rubbish of the ruling class. Now, here's where I'm going to get mathematical on everyone, okay? So now let's look at the estimated fatality rates that have been updated by the CDC, the same organization of authority, and I use that term very loosely with a lot of disdain, that here are their updated survival rates for the virus by age group. If you're 0 to 19, or let's look at the updated fatality rates, right? If you're 0 to 19, there's a 0.003% of risk of death from CVD, which means that translates into 3 in 100,000. If you're between 20 to 49, there's a 0.02% risk of fatality, or 2 in 10,000. Now that's 10,000 infected people. If 10,000 people get infected, 2 people would die in the 20 to 49 age group. If you're in the age 50 to 69, like I said, this virus is completely non-lethal to anyone under the age of 70. It's still only 5 in 1,000. And then when they say it's 70 or above, they say it's 6.4 out of 100. It gets up to 5.4%. So 5 out of 100, which is a high. I'll admit that is high. But then again, I still have a lot of skepticism even about these fatality rates as far as how they were being gathered. Because you have to look at the methodology by which these statistics are compiled. That methodology is completely inefficient, non-robust, and vulnerable to producing a lot of false data. Then obviously even the fatality data can be completely over-exaggerated. But I'm going to give the CDC the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say the fatality statistics are correct. Then we still see that there's no reason for any panic in anyone that's less than 70 years of age. Now, who are professional athletes? Okay, let's look at the NBA. Here's how I can prove the absurdity of this whole situation to you. So everyone in the NBA that's an athlete, their odds of dying are either 3 in 100,000. That's if 100,000 people get infected, 3 would die, or 2 in 10,000. So look, I'll even go with the more fear statistic. Let's take the 2 in 10,000, okay? And that's a fair statistic to take because there are very few NBA players that are 19 and younger in the NBA. There's just a handful. Okay, so let's use the more aggressive statistic, 2 in 10,000. There's only about 500 people, professional NBA players this year. And that number is even exaggerated because there are There were exceptions made to hold extra players on the NBA roster for all 30 teams because of the fact that some NBA players are testing positive and then have to be banned from playing for like 10 games. So teams were not having enough players to go play a game. So the NBA commissioner made some exceptions, say, hey, we're going to expand the number of players you can have on your roster. So, you have to keep this in mind. 500 is not the regular number. So they expanded it at 500. So what did I just tell you? The fatality rate is 10 in 10,000. There's only 500. So how did we get to 10,000? So this is if we had 20 NBAs, 20 leagues, all called the NBA, operating in the United States. And if you had 20 leagues, each with 30 teams, then you would finally have 10,000 people. And then if every single player, now we're not talking one player on this team, one player on this team, one player on that team got infected, which is what is happening now. Every single player in the entire league, on all 20 leagues, because one league is not enough. One league is only 500 players. So you have to create 19 more leagues. And if every single player in all 20 NBA leagues were infected, the only people would die, only 2. So that's to show you the absurdity of what is going on, and the absurdity of players being being Karens and going into hysteria. Someone comes within 6 feet of them and they're not masked up, and you say, oh, well, then they could test positive, and then they have to be out and their team suffers. No, if they weren't Karens, if they were really honorable intellectuals, what they would be doing is studying what I'm telling you in this video, and then really defying what the commissioner is saying, presenting facts and science to the commissioner for these stupid garbage rubbish rules that are being, and here's I'm even going to tell you, because most people don't even realize what it means when an NBA player becomes infected. So of course we've had the biggest thing, because even I've heard this, and I don't really follow sports all that closely at all. I might watch a game or here or there, but not anywhere close to what it was like when I was younger. And some sports I used to watch, I haven't watched any games in like 10 years. So it's only like 2 sports I still watch, football and basketball. That's it. And nowhere near maybe 10% of the games I used to watch when I was like in my 20s. So in any event, okay, let's look at what we know, because in the NBA, the most famous case is Karl Anthony Towns, who plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves, because he said he lost his mom to the virus as well as 7 family members, right? So just to be explicitly clear in this, I'm not saying that nobody should give their condolences. Of course, everyone should give their condolences to this NBA player. Everyone should express, their support of him. But all I'm saying is that when I looked up, all I could find was really information on his mother. And they said that his mother tested positive, but as I said, if you look at the tests for the virus, we really don't know if she was positive for this or had something else, right? Had some other viral infection other than that, and then the virus told her that she had. But the really important part is that it said that she was put on a ventilator, after which she died. Now, I've seen plenty of other people that said they had it and they had really bad symptoms, but they were told by their friends that had really researched this, do not go on a ventilator or you will die. Because what the ventilator does is that it breathes for you. So it really takes the fight out of your system. Whereas if you don't go on a ventilator, you'll fight and you'll keep fighting to breathe on your own. So the people that didn't go on ventilators, studies have shown now, have survived, that had really severe conditions. And almost every single person that had severe symptoms that went on a ventilator died. There was almost 100% death rate. So unfortunately, Karl Anthony Towns' mom was put on a ventilator, and then after that she died. So that is number one, what I would really look into. And then the other thing is that this year, I don't know, please comment below if you know anyone that got the flu. I don't know anyone that got the flu this year. This is the first year that I can remember in decades that I can't recall anyone I know or any of my friends ever getting the flu. Now, I know plenty of people and even some friends that said they got the virus, what virus I'm speaking about, but what they had was either no symptoms, because I said you can get a lot of false positives if you're taking the PCR test or even a rapid response test, and they had just flu-like symptoms, right? So I personally think they had the flu. They said, no, I got the test, even though I told them the test is inaccurate and yields a lot of false positives, and that they wanted to, they could use a PCR test and probably find that my same friends that, received a positive CVD test probably would test positive for HIV as well, because it's not testing for the entire genome of that virus. It's just looking for parts of the virus, and then it's amplifying it a million times to find, I'm exaggerating, of course, by saying a million times, but it's amplifying it like 30, 40 times. So they can find whatever virus, like the inventor of the PCR test said, that they want to, right? It doesn't mean that they're infected, okay? So my explanation is that, yeah, I did know some friends that had the flu, but but I don't have any friends that told me that they had the flu, because everyone that had any kind of symptoms similar to the flu all said, oh, no, I had the virus and I survived it. So again, that's complete rubbish. And what's the explanation that all the medical authorities are giving us that are making all these policy lockdown decisions? They're saying, oh, well, the flu was eradicated this year because it's precisely because of our social distancing mandates and because of our lockdowns of people and our, lockdowns of travel. That's why the flu was eradicated this year, which is complete rubbish. Anyone that has any scientific background know that's complete rubbish, because number one, you're not going to completely eradicate the flu. You could significantly cause, a statistically significant decline in the rates of people contracting the flu, but you're never going to eradicate it, even with all those mandates. So everyone knows that's rubbish. And then secondly, if you eradicated the flu, which miraculously disappeared last year, then why does the CVD still flourish? Why was there like a third wave? Why was that not eradicated? And then these authorities will say, oh, well, that wasn't eradicated because it's more robust. It survives more strongly than the common flu does. And what did I say last year? I said that, number one, for everyone that thinks that when 2021 comes, that we're all going to be free to travel, we're all going to be free to within our homes domestically and internationally, I said that's garbage. You can see where this is heading. That's not going to stop this year. And exactly as I stated, it did not stop. And what else did I say? I said they're going to just say that it mutated, because most people don't have a scientific background, don't know that all viruses mutate. All viruses mutate. They experience something called antigenic drift. So they're just going to come out, say this virus mutated into a stronger, more robust virus that's more dangerous. That's why we have to keep locking people down. And that's exactly what I said was going to happen has happened. So again, if you don't know what antigenic drift is, look it up. Every virus experiences antigenic drift, including even the common flu virus, which is the reason why that flu vaccine is highly ineffective in large percentages of people, because it constantly mutates every single year. So look, even the NBA rules, okay, I'm going to tell them they use the rapid test and the PCR test, right? Okay, and the traditional diagnostic test or molecular test. So what's the difference between an antigen test, which is PCR test, and a molecular test? Well, antigen test will detect, the rapid tests are almost always antigen tests, okay? The molecular tests are like the PCR tests, and the NBA uses both. Okay, so the antigen test detects specific proteins on the surface of the virus, and those tests are quicker, less expensive, but have a higher chance of either missing an active infection. So they say it's less accurate, the rapid test, than the PCR test, which is almost comical, because if you have really studied this or listened to any of my previous podcasts about how inaccurate the PCR tests are, they're saying that the antigen test is even more inaccurate than the PCR test. So what do any of these tests mean that the NBA is using? Nothing. It means nothing. And again, they're using stupid arbitrary rules. Like some of the rules, I didn't even know what they were, but I looked them up to make this podcast. Let me just say real quickly, in case I see my power is going low, so hopefully it doesn't cut off. If it cuts off unexpectedly, that's what happened, but hopefully it won't. Okay, so some of these arbitrary rules that they've established. They said, okay, anyone that's in close contact with someone that tested positive has to go into quarantine and be out for several games. And they define close contact as anyone that's within 6 feet of someone that tested positive or was in contact with them for at least 15 minutes. So again, what are these stupid, magical, arbitrary distances and time? So if you're 6.5 feet away, that's okay. But the virus won't go more than 6 feet. It only stops at 6 feet. You're 6.5 feet, you're okay. And it also stops spreading if you are only spent 14 times in the presence of someone that's infected. But if you spent 14 minutes or 14 minutes and 59 seconds to be exact, because they said it has to be at least 15 minutes. So if you spent 14 minutes and 59 seconds in the presence of someone infected, apparently the virus doesn't get going. It doesn't transmit in 14 minutes. It only transmits after 15 minutes of close contact. So after 15 minutes, then you are subjected to quarantine. So you see how absurd all this stuff is, just completely absurd. Okay? So that's basically what I wanted to tell you about this today. So thanks so much for watching. Please do comment below. Don't forget, if you listened all the way to the end, thanks so much for watching. All my content is supported by you, my content consumer. So thanks so much if you have supported me in the past or are supporting me now. If you like to support me, throw me a bone, please go to the links below to find out how you can support me by becoming an SK Wealth Academy patron, of which you get a lot more bonus content available only to patrons. So if you enjoyed anything I've discussed about the GameStop short squeeze, the silver short squeeze, gold is silver in the past, the price manipulations, any of this information about the CVD, then please do go ahead and consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/SK Wealth Academy. And many blessings, much gratitude to all those of you that contributed to the launch of my next entrepreneurial venture, which all has to do about increasing our levels of critical thinking, encouraging all of us not to be a ward of the state, to use our brains, because academia and regular schooling does not encourage that at all, does not encourage critical thinking. It's basically rote memorization and vomiting things we memorize on tests in school. And also teaching applied knowledge, which means the knowledge you learn in school, whether it's astronomy, whether it's mathematics, whether it's physics, whether it's engineering, should all be information geared toward improving our quality of life, should be applicable in the real world. Because let me tell you, as somebody that studied business and even received my MBA, as long as in a double master's program, that almost 99% of the knowledge, I would say is very close to 100% of the knowledge that I gained in my MBA program is not applied knowledge, meaning all that garbage I learned in school is not how the real world works. That's not how finances work in the real world. So there's nothing there that helped to improve my quality of life. Okay, so thanks so much for watching. As always, remain intensely curious, and always remember, remain immensely courageous. And bless up to everyone. So long.